Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson.
Today's guest is Fredrik Joulamo, the Secretary General at the Swedish Basketball Federation. Fredrik started his career in retail, but knew early that he wanted to work in basketball. He has been a coach, head of the Swedish National Teams, and now the Secretary General. Get ready to learn why Jonas Jerebko is not allowed to play for the Swedish national team, the reason for why the national teams have a different coaching structure, the values of the Swedish Basketball Federation, Fredrik's journey through sports, and much more. Fredrik Joulamo, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here and happy that I got the request.
Super excited to talk to you. And for those who might not know, you are the Secretary General at the Swedish Basketball Federation. So can you tell us a little bit about your role and what it includes?
My job is a pretty wide and complex role, actually. We're a fairly big sports federation, basketball, if we look at the number of active players, but we're not one of the most commercial ones, which leads us to maybe at times we're a little bit less manned than other federations. So we have 18 staff, but still we have a long way to go before we're one of the big commercial ones like soccer or hockey that are much bigger than us, and also innebandy. But because of that, and we have a somewhat small or slim organization, I get involved in many different levels, but basically I manage our staff. And I'm responsible for budgeting and execution of our strategic goals, and I report directly to the board. Our federation is divided into national teams, competitions, education, and marketing. So it's quite a wide array of activities and operations.
Yeah, and you oversee all of these aspects that you mentioned now, from national team to marketing?
I do, but we also have departments for each and every one of our operations. I have one head of competition, one head of national teams, and so on. So I don't directly govern those operations, but I'm in charge of them, and in the end, I'm responsible for all of them.
Yeah. So obviously I have a lot of questions, and they touch upon, different aspects that you mentioned there. But if we talk about basketball as a sport, you mentioned that it's not the most famous one. It's not as big as ice hockey, football, or floorball in Sweden, at least. Why do you think that is? Why can not someone who play, football not play basketball? So why do you think people choose other sports?
I would say that, if we're looking at Stockholm, we're second biggest sport in Stockholm, which is by far Sweden's biggest city. And I think generally we're strong in some areas of Sweden. I think tradition is a big part of sports in Sweden. Like soccer has had a grip on Sweden for such a long time, and also ice hockey, of course. I mean, floorball is a pretty young sport, and it's come out of, maybe if I'm just assuming things, I would say that floorball today is getting professional. They're a very professional organization, but they're built from people that came from hockey or soccer before. Handball is also a strong sport in Sweden, but I think that also maybe the set of rules for basketball and the way basketball is played, maybe it just doesn't appeal the same way as soccer does to Swedish people in general. It's a game which is extremely tactical. There's a lot of people on a small area, and it's also a lot of goal scoring, and maybe it's sometimes people think that the rules are difficult. But I also see a positive development. We're getting more and more players. We're getting bigger and bigger. Our events are attracting much more people. We're playing today at Avicii Arena and Hovet in Stockholm with our national teams. And we see that the number of people that have an interest in basketball is increasing all the time. So we have a positive development.
That's great to hear. And could that be something for the marketing department maybe to, with the rules and make it more appealing and easier to understand the sport?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of our tasks to make basketball available for everyone. And one part of that is, it's not a new phenomenon in basketball playing 3-on-3, but 3x3, as the official term is, was at the latest Olympics. And it's probably the only sport that you see played in urban areas all over the world today. It's growing rapidly. And the set of rules in 3x3 is much, much easier. And maybe at times it is more accessible to every, to all people. And I think that's a very important step for us to make 3x3 more available to everyone with the Swedish tours and the Olympics and all the competitions that are available. But for sure, that's one of our responsibilities.
Something that crossed my mind now is the interest for Formula One peaked after the Netflix series. This might be difficult for you to know because it was pretty recent, but after the Chicago Bulls documentary that became very famous recently on Netflix, have you seen any spike in interest after that?
I wouldn't say that we've seen a spike in interest when it comes to active players, but definitely the reactions after the show, because Michael Jordan is a household name, regardless of what you like, what kind of sports you like. Michael Jordan is one of the greatest athletes of all time, regardless of sports. So the documentary for sure made basketball more, a household sport, and people that I've never talked about basketball with before came up to me and talked about the documentary and how horrible at times Michael Jordan seemed, or what Dennis Rodman did in the show and so on. So, but this is also something that we see all the time. Basketball is really big in like TV shows, college movies, commercials. If you watch commercials on TV and the company wants to send a signal that they're young and sportive, they're not going to run around with like a handball. They run around with a basketball in commercials. And if you see a company that want to market towards younger groups, we see that many times they use basketball as a platform. So I think every kind of attention that we get helps to grow the sport. We just need to capitalize on it.
Might not be the easiest task, but yeah.
It's a challenge.
Of course. Looking into the national teams a little bit, I know that you previously have been a national team coach and head of national teams. You have a very good understanding of that. If I'm correct, you have a little bit of a different setup when it comes to coaching for the national teams. You don't have like a head coach and assistant coach. You have more of a match coach, and so you have more specified. Can you explain the different roles and also why you have chosen to go this way?
If I do this, the second question first, the reason that we took this step was that we think that basketball in Sweden, we have to do stuff differently, and we have to do it in a way that suits us. And what we saw was that being a national team coach in Sweden was very much guided by a traditional role and how we traditionally see the role of being a head coach. This for us was, we weren't taking care of the whole staff's competence. Maybe we had 85% of the head coach's competence, but then the assistant coaches that we had surrounding the head coach were not really, adding as much as we would like to. We also saw that we needed to get other kinds of skills involved in the staff surrounding our national teams. So what we did was basically that we said that we're not appointing a head coach. We're appointing a team that we want to work with, and we want to involve them in discussing the roles. So a higher degree of involvement, making all people surrounding our national teams being able to do what they do best, and having more of a shared leadership, but with clear definitions of the role is the strategy that we've taken. So we've never said that they need to divide it into match coach or defensive coach or offensive coach. Our main goal was to involve all people in what kind of role they would get. Instead of saying that you're going to be the head coach and you're going to be the assistant coach, we said that these four people we want to work with, and let's discuss how we form the leadership.
So how is the hierarchy? If there are, difference of opinion, who has the longest straw, so to speak?
It also depends a little bit on which group we're talking about. But if we look at how the men's national team staff are working right now, they're divided into match coach, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, and responsible of individual scouting and scouting. So they discuss every decision within that small group. They plan everything together. They discuss everything. They have differences of opinion. If it comes down to that they can't reach consensus in one question, then the person responsible for that for the specific area has the final say. So if it's an offensive question and we're talking about, are we running X or are we running Y, and it's 2-2, then we're running X. During game situations, it's very specific because things happen so quickly, and then we have to trust the person in charge of being a match coach, unless it's a timeout or things like that. And we can't have, debates on what to do. So it has to be clear who has the final say. And I think that's working well for the senior staffs. This is the first year we do it. So with the youth national teams, they're applying it right now as we speak. They're practicing for the first time in this way of work. And it's going to be a learning experience. We're going to learn and they're going to learn, but it's something that we believe in and that we think that it's going to make us stronger.
Where did this come from? Have you seen this somewhere else, or is this something that you worked out within the federation?
We've had inspiration, but we haven't seen the exact same model anywhere else. But our inspiration to this model was, Lars Tommy with the soccer national team that had a shared leadership that was even called Lars Tommy. We also looked at the Canadian Basketball Federation where they have a team of coaches and they divide the windows between them. But we also looked as far as track and field. They have like a manager, which is our equivalent of the general manager of the national teams, Lasse Johansson. And then they have specific coaches for javelin or running or whatever it is. So they're working more team-based than we traditionally see in basketball. And this has been the inspiration for us. But it's also something we've discussed for a long time, and we don't see it as something strange. It's just a matter of getting every person that is involved in our national teams, getting as much of their knowledge and skills as possible in a way that everyone feels involved in a higher level.
And how has the feedback been from the players so far? It's pretty new still, but so far.
Yeah. So the women's national team has only had one live window and a camp, and my feeling is that it's been very well accepted. I think it suits Swedish persons in general and basketball players in particular. With the men's team, every signal I'm getting from the players is that it's really good. They like the way they're working, and they feel that the four coaches are doing it together. They feel the team within the team. So far, so good. But we also know that we're not going to be in this, pink cloud of happiness forever. We're going to lose games. And when we lose games, people are going to start to criticize this. On the other hand, if we did it the traditional way and we appointed a head coach and two assistants, people would have opinions if we lose then too. So there's nothing new under the sun there.
People always have opinions.
Of course, and they should. That's a sign that we're interesting and people care.
This episode is sponsored by InSport Education, the online business school for sport. Right now, they are offering course recordings on demand for only £199. Private equity in sport, sustainability in sport, or governance in women's sport, take your pick. As always, you get 10% off all courses with the code SPORTSMANAGEMENTPODCAST10. Click the link in the description below to see the complete course list. Talking about the national team, and a question that's been huge lately is the Jonas Jerebko situation. So just to give a very short backstory, Jonas is our biggest basketball star in, I don't know, at least as long as I remember, and has been playing in NBA. And he took the very questionable decision after Russia invaded Ukraine to go and play in Russia in CSKA basketball. After this, you made a statement and you said that you had a dialogue with him and, quote, "Unfortunately, we have been forced to state that there are no conditions for Jonas to represent the Swedish national basketball team."
Correct.
First of all, can you say what you talked with Jonas about and how he came to that decision?
First, I I would say that Jonas is by far the biggest star of Swedish basketball, especially on the male side. We have on the female side, we've had players that have reached the level of Jonas and maybe at times surpassed them on the female side, like Amanda Sawi, who's been a star in the women's NBA and the EuroLeague forever. But for sure, Jonas is an icon in Swedish basketball. And also a person that I've, gotten in touch with many, many times throughout the years. And also for that reason, what was said between me and Jonas at those phone calls will stay there. But I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that we explained our position, that it's unacceptable. We cannot have someone on the national team that doesn't share our values in this particular case, and also considering that we, during the game before Jonas made this decision, when he was playing in Norrköping against Croatia, we had a statement against the invasion together with Croatia, and we were very clear with how we see this situation. So, looking at all these factors and then knowing that we had discussions after Jonas chose to sign with the CSKA, doesn't take much effort to understand that we just were too far apart. He didn't see it the way we saw it, and that's the end of the story. We're not going to budge on this. We uphold our values. It's very important to us and to the rest of the group, and this is the situation we're in.
It's difficult from someone from outside to understand why someone in his situation would make that decision, because it seems like it's a financial decision that he would go there to make more money, but playing in the NBA that he cannot be short of money. Is there anything you can share from your conversation that, excused why he went? I understand you want to keep it confidential, but is there something?
Yeah. No, I mean, Jonas reasons for signing in CSKA, we can only speculate about this because this is something that we didn't talk about. Is it money or is it something else? What was clear from Jonas' point of view is that he saw CSKA as a really big club, which it is or has been in Europe and in the world. And he saw this as an opportunity. Whatever convinced him to sign is it's his prerogative. And for us, it was never about length of the contract. It was never about throwing Jonas under the bus. It was just a clear statement that this is our position, and what we expect of our national team players is that even if they don't agree with everything, they shouldn't go in the opposite direction of it. We can't be that far apart on value related issues. So it was a really sad decision to have to make. Very, very emotional for everyone involved, both for Jonas and for us as a federation and everyone surrounding the situation. But in the end, it was a tough decision, but it wasn't difficult in that sense. It was clear. If we want to stand up for our values and what we believe in and be the federation we want to, then this is the position we have.
I understand that. Does that mean that Jonas will never play in the Swedish national team in the future as well?
Yeah, that's part of it too, because like I said, right around the situation when it happened was that we're a kind of federation that want to stand up for our values. We're not going to budge on that. We're not going to compromise on that. But on the other hand, we're also a federation that wants to give people second chances. We want a dialogue with our players and everyone involved in basketball. And we're not about branding people for all time. So saying that Jonas will never play, it's not a statement I would be ready to take. However, for us, the position hasn't changed. And our standpoint has not changed. If Jonas was interested in coming back, which I'm not sure that he is because of the situation, then we would have to have a dialogue, and he would have to talk to us about what has changed in the way you value the situation, and we haven't seen that yet. So at the moment, we don't see him playing until we have a dialogue about it.
I understand. So I told you before we started interviewing here, and the listeners know I work in the hockey space, so in the hockey industry, and that's what I manage closely. And it was very interesting to see because, as you said, the Basketball Federation, the Swedish Basketball Federation, made a very clear statement. You said, here are our values, this is not okay. The Swedish Ice Hockey Federation did not do that at all. It was vague and they didn't say anything. Why do you think it could be such difference in values in the same country between two sports?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's such a big difference in value, because I would never go into judging the decisions made by another federation or another board or another secretary general. But Russia in ice hockey, which is, you know, a European sport with also NHL, of course, but that's about the range that hockey is. Basketball is a world sport. It's played on all continents, even Africa and Oceania and everything. So, I mean, there's a difference in sports first and foremost, but also I think that sometimes we stand out even in Sweden. I mean, it's not that hockey is different. It's more like we try to be different because we've done things that federations maybe we're the first federation to do that. One example is that we opened up for roundtable talks concerning racism in Swedish basketball, which is something that I haven't seen other federations do in that sense. We've been for a while now a value-driven federation. And I'm not going to judge how hockey did this. I know that there were legal aspects, and I know that their international federation also made different decisions that affected the Swedish Hockey Federation's possibility to change the situation. Whereas our federation said that the players are free to leave. I know that in hockey and in soccer, they were able to somehow freeze the contract or under certain circumstances act differently. So, but I don't know. I mean, I think we're different in many ways when it comes to value and the way we stand up for our values. And maybe sometimes people say to us that, why do you have to do that? Why can't you be more like hockey or someone else? But it's just in our identity and the kind of federation that we are.
So you brought up an interesting point there with the International Ice Hockey Federation, because it's a lot of politics in sports. Some people say you shouldn't mix it, but inevitably it's there. How is your cooperation with the International Basketball Federation, and what type of information and help did they give to your federation after Russia invaded Ukraine?
Well, we didn't have much direct contact with our international federation at that time. They made the decision that Russian and Belarusian teams were excluded from international competitions. Russian and Belarusian officials were excluded from being part of international competition. But our position on this was, in this question, we're first and foremost a part of Sweden. That means that what our government and our confederation, Riksidrottsförbundet, says and does is what is our first guide, and our second guide is our international federation. So in the situation with Jonas, we had no contact at all with the international federation, and we only had one player. Before Jonas signed in CSKA, we didn't have any Swedish players playing in Russia, which is also a big difference from hockey and soccer and maybe some other sports too. So had this been 3 or 4 years earlier, we could have been many more Swedish players over there that maybe would have made the situation different. We would still have stood up for our values, but being in Russia and not leaving Russia during the invasion, that can have many different reasons. There can be pressure from within the club, and you have families and everything like that. So, but with our international federation, they've been very, I think they've been supportive to the member federations, but they haven't told us what to do. They've said that what their position is, and then every federation has had to make their own decisions.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there have been Swedish players in Russia when the invasion happened, and then they didn't leave. And you mentioned that there were no Swedish basketball players in Russia at that point. So, but hypothetically, how would you have handled that situation if there were already players there that did not leave?
Well, hypothetically, if we would have had players in Russia at the time of the invasion, Then with the rules that our international federation said that, you're allowed to leave and break your contract, which many players did. Just from CSKA, one of the best players they had was a Danish player who left right away. If this would have happened, we would have had a dialogue with the player and said that, if you're going to play for the national team, we want you to leave your Russian club and sign somewhere else. And without jumping to conclusions, because it's not just me, we have a board and we have an organization that would have a say on this. But if I'm guessing hypothetically, we would have said if someone chose to stay in Russia during these conditions, that you can't be a part of the national team, like we did with Jonas. Even though I think signing, knowing what is going on, is a different level. Still, staying is not something that we would condone either. Not if the possibility to leave was there.
Before we jump into the next segment with your career, is there anything else on this particular question that you would like to mention?
No, not really, because, like I said, it's been really sad for everyone involved in basketball in Sweden, because Jonas Jerebko is our Zlatan Ibrahimovic or Peter Forsberg or, Sara Sjöström. It's an icon in Swedish basketball. And when he played for us in Norrköping, and the window before was the first time in many years that we had Jonas back. And it was somewhat of a homecoming when Jonas rejoined the national team after many years of absence. So having it end this way and not being able to play him now in the Finland game coming up is sad. So it was kind of traumatic for the whole movement. But I also feel that we had our whole movement in the back, more or less. The opinion of what people thought about our decision, I think we have a consensus that it was the right thing to do.
So if we talk about you and your career, if I'm correct, you started your working career in retail and then worked your way up until Secretary General. So can you tell us a little bit your journey through the sports industry?
Yeah, if I go back early, I was born into basketball with a father that was a basketball coach and a basketball freak. So it was natural for me to become a player and play for a long time. But pretty early, I decided to go into coaching. But I always knew that I would want to work with basketball full time. But I didn't really see that career and the career possibilities within Sweden. So my decision was to do something else for a number of years and maybe create an economic space for me to do the things that I love the most. So first I did military service for a couple of years, first in Sweden and then abroad. And after that, I started law school in Lund. And also at that time, my plan was, maybe to become a sports agent, which I was interested in. So towards the end of my education, I started thinking about writing my essay or my paper, my final exam paper within a law firm that specialized in sports agencies. But it never panned out. So instead, I got the opportunity to open up a sports store together with a friend. And for me, it was more like, I didn't even think at that time that this was sports related, even if it was sports shop. So it was more like a fun thing to do and an exciting challenge to start up a new business. So basically that's what I did for a number of years after law school. I worked I ran a sports store together with a friend.
And then as you said, you were coaching, you were head of national teams, and now you're the Secretary General. So looking back on your career, has there been any bumps on the road? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think in all careers, all lines of work, there are always bumps or obstacles, setbacks. I think but when you work in sports as a coach or in a federation or even as a player, we're very much driven by the short-term results. Like soccer coaches or hockey coaches or basketball coaches. If you lose 10 in a row, you're gonna, maybe you're gonna get fired. If you're working as a salesperson on a company, you're not gonna get fired because you have a bad streak. But I mean, it just goes hand in hand with what sports is. It's emotion and it's short-term results. It's winning, losing. So I've had setbacks for sure. One of them was my year as a head coach in Luleå in the men's league. I didn't do a good job in that situation. I know that I should have done many things differently. And I could also see that this wasn't for me. That job was just not for me. It didn't suit me. But I think that everyone needs to experience those setbacks or those road bumps to develop and to be able to analyze what I did good and what I didn't do good, and learn from that experience and just find out more about yourself. So I've had several, of course, but this is maybe the one that was most important to me.
I understand. If we look ahead, both for maybe your own career, but for Swedish basketball, what can we look forward to?
Well, like I said before, we're a growing sport. I think we've taken major steps in being a more commercial sport today. We attract way more interest both for our domestic leagues and our sports in general, but first and foremost, our national teams that are able to fill up arenas today that we weren't a couple of years back. So my hope is that we will continue to grow, that we will start taking ground on the other sports and catching up with the bigger ones, competing with them about the big sponsors that feel that basketball is a place where they would want to invest because of the sport we are and the values we have. I would like to see our men's national team qualify for European championships. Now we're involved in World Cup qualification, but after that we will start going into Euro Cup qualification or European Championship qualification. That would be a major step. I see a bright future for Swedish basketball, and I think we've managed to grow throughout the pandemic and come out stronger on the other end. So hopefully there's a bright future.
That sounds great. The last question that I ask everyone is if you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who do you think that I should talk to?
Oof, big question. But I think this podcast would suit Mikael Alerup, who's the Secretary General of Swedish Floorball. He has a background in soccer also as a CEO of AIK and also from the experience industry. So I think this could suit Micke. He's a good guy and talkative, so it'd be interesting to hear him.
For sure. I was speaking to the Secretary General of the International Floorball Federation, John Liljelund, in one of the first episodes. So that's almost 2 years ago. So maybe it's time to revisit floorball once again.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Fredrik, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Twitter or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.